Welcome into OutKick the show. Guys, do we have the Kash Patel joke, the Trump joke that I just asked to make sure that we have? Can you get that if we don't have it yet 4 days later and have it ready to play, please? In the meantime, I'm starting off with the biggest story, obviously, in the world right now, and it is our war with Iran, which started in the early hours United States time on Saturday, in the daylight hours in Iran. And look, I think this is further evidence of President Trump and the impact and the reality that what happened to him with the double assassination attempts. And I think you can add in certainly the attempt to bankrupt him, the attempt to put him in prison for the rest of his life. He's not doing things halfway anymore. He's trying to fix every single issue that he sees that exists in the country, and he's trying to do it in one term. And to me, this is what's tied in with Iran and why it is so significant what's going on there. For basically my entire life, I was born in 1979 when the Islamic Republic came to power in Iran and kicked out the royal family and ended what had been one of the cultural flowers of the Middle East and began Iran on basically a 46, 47-year descent into awfulness. And if you go back in time and you look at photos, you look at videos from the 1970s in Iran, Persian culture embraced education. To a large extent, it embraced Western civilization. Women walked around in high heels and skirts. Men wore suits. This was a country that was incredibly successful. And then the veil of terror descended upon the country. And as a result, we are continuing to deal with the fallout from that moment. And when I woke up on early Saturday morning and saw that we had began to bomb Iran, and as I saw during the course of the day Saturday that we had killed Khamenei and around 49 others of the top echelon of leaders in Iran, I said, thank the Lord, because I believe in basic human rights around the world. And what we have seen happen for nearly 50 years was we are just perpetually extending the reign of terror that has descended across the Middle East, and that Iran has continued to perpetuate around the world. Look, most of the terror that you see in the world emanates from Iran and the terror proxies that they have funded, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's Hamas, whatever the organization is, all of it is originating from Iran. And if we want that to end, as most people of goodwill and good faith around the world do, then the only way to end it once and for all is to cut the head of the leadership off, to cut the head of the snake off. And that's what President Trump decided to do on Saturday. And so I commend him. This is something that I've been advocating for a long time. I don't see it as remotely partisan. I give credit to John Fetterman for his commentary on this, which I think has actually been better than any other Democrat. And what John Fetterman said is something that I think is incredibly important. Every member in the U.S. Senate, I'm reading from Fetterman, agrees we can't allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. I'm baffled why so many are unwilling to support the only action to achieve that. Empty sloganeering versus commitment to global security. Which is it? This is very basic stuff. You either believe in human rights or you don't. And for those out there that are taking aim at the president, look, there are lots of things you can argue here. You can argue, hey, we don't know how this is going to end up. That's certainly fair. You can argue that we are going to destabilize the Middle East, and that's going to lead to greater security dangers in the years ahead. You can certainly argue all those things. But the intent here, the intent of the President of the United States is to free 90 million people living with no basic human rights in Iran. And this is important. Most of the countries in the Middle East, countries that used to be far smaller economically than Iran, have now come out and started to line up behind the United States, even in public. And there are reports, so why it's always important to pay attention to what people do, not what they say. There are reports that Saudi Arabia was lined up alongside of Israel, arguing that President Trump needed to take out the Iranian leadership to have stability for both Jews and Muslims, and Christians for that matter, in the Middle East. That we can't have a perpetual sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East if we're ever going to have freedom. And all of this is connected, I think, in a very significant way to what happened on October 7, 2023. On October 7, 2023, Hamas attacked Israel and took 1,200 innocent Israeli lives and over 200 hostages. Why did they do it? I've been to Israel. I have walked the ground of the Nova Music Festival, where many hundreds of people were murdered in cold blood. I have walked around all of the areas just off the border in Gaza. I have seen the border with Lebanon in the north of Israel. I have seen the borders all along the Gaza Strip. I have seen all of the ground that's bloodstained there in Israel. And why did they do it? I think ultimately they took this action, Hamas did, because they were terrified that Israel was about to have the Abraham Accords expanded and Saudi Arabia was going to sign on to the Abraham Accords too. And so if the Abraham Accords expand, you could end up with normalized relations between Israel and many other different Arab Muslim states, and we could actually have freedom, peace, and security for more people in the Middle East. And look, I want to go visit. I have not been. I've not been to Bahrain. I've not been to Qatar. I haven't been to Saudi Arabia. I haven't been to the UAE. I haven't been to any of those countries. I want to go visit them as well. But what I'm encouraged by is many of those countries seem to be run by pragmatic, business-focused leaders. And Israel, I believe, is run by pragmatic, business-focused leaders. Okay? Now, some of those people are Jewish, and some of those people are Muslim, and some people in those countries even are Christian. I want good people, Jews, Muslims, Christians around the world to all have the same basic human rights and the same basic freedoms. And so what I see President Trump doing is, that's big picture Middle East, big picture around the world. What's going on here? Trump is engaging in what I think is the most consequential steps for freedom in the world since we saw the Berlin Wall come down in 1989. We are seeing, if you look at Venezuela, Venezuelans with more freedoms than they have had in decades. If you look at Cuba, 8.5 million people living under awful communist rule in Cuba, I believe are soon going to have much more freedom. And certainly in Iran, a country with more people under the veil of terror than almost any country in the world, 90 million of them in the Middle East. I want to read for you. There's a little bit of an overlap. Some of you will have heard this on my radio show. But Jamie Chadwell, some of you will remember him, Coastal Carolina's former head football coach. He also is right now Liberty's head football coach. So a lot of you will remember Jamie Chadwell, will know him. His wife, Solmaz, is Iranian. And she posted this. He sent it to me on Instagram. And I thought it was really well said. She said, I want to describe what the February 28th occurrence, that is America taking out the Ayatollah, means to us, as well as millions of Persians who sacrificed everything to flee the harshness of the regime. My parents were crying tears of joy on Saturday. Persians all over the world are breathing a sigh of relief for the first time in 47 years. It's not tears of joy over a war. These are tears of hope and a future for the nation and the people of Iran. It's about having solace. It's declaring justice for the thousands upon thousands of innocent people that the Islamic regime has imprisoned, falsely accused, and killed. It's for the parents who had to search through hundreds of body bags laying in a yard just to find their deceased child that was brutally murdered for only wanting to voice their opinion, to dance in the streets, to not have to cover their hair for the child who wanted a future for freedom. Please do not ever take your freedom here in the United States for granted. I never understood how people here could despise the USA so much, how they could burn the flag, how they could protest against the United States and everything that it has given them. I guess because they never had to live a life that took all those freedoms away. Signed, a hopeful and grateful Persian American. Jamie Chadwell sent me that from his wife that she posted in the wake of President Trump's attacks on the Iranian terror regime. How could anyone oppose this? Now, again, you can criticize, maybe, the way that the end result occurs. But to me, anyone lining up against this is basically taking the side of terror. They're taking the side of brutal dictators dehumanizing and refusing to allow basic human rights for their people around the world. And let me speak specifically to the kids out there, to you young knuckleheads who aren't smart enough to know any better, to you who took over UCLA's campus to protest in favor of Hamas, to you who took over Columbia's campus to protest in favor of Hamas and the people of Gaza, to you who took over so many campuses across our nation and said, we are standing for the people who live in the Palestinian areas and who spoke out against Israel's right to defend itself. Leave aside Israel. Don't even consider Israel at all. If you truly support freedom in the Middle East, how are you not marching everywhere, waving Iranian flags in favor of the rights of the people of Iran to have the freedoms that they had taken away in the 1970s? All over America, I've been incredibly proud to see people protesting in Los Angeles, people protesting in Washington, D.C., people protesting in New York City in a very positive way, mind you, waving Iranian and American flags, thanking President Trump for giving their country the opportunity to once again have freedom. I don't understand how this is political. I don't understand how people just line up reflexively and are opposed to the President of the United States just because they don't like him. Even people you disagree with politically can make good choices. If you use as an arbiter how you voted in 2016 or 2020 or 2024 as a proxy for what you believe is proper, then you, I believe, are failing basic human intelligence tests. What we have here is a hopeful flourishment of freedom, the likes of which we have not seen in generations in the Middle East. If President Trump is able to install a new government in Iran, help to install, alongside of the Iranian people, a new government in Iran that is able to provide safety, security, basic human rights to its citizens, and isn't pursuing nuclear ambitions, then we suddenly are going to have a much safer Middle East. Remember, Iran funds most of the terrorism that is there. They just killed tens of thousands of their own people for protesting for basic human rights. They have consistently killed thousands of people, Americans included, going all the way back to 1979 in terror attacks. This is a profoundly evil government. The people of Iran, however, are good. I'm going to pivot here into the world of sports for a moment, which is much less significant than the war in Iran. But let me say this, and I hope we clip it because I want to share it and tag him. I've already tweeted this. President Trump and President Trump's team, I actually think it would be very impactful if President Trump comes out and says, We want Iran to represent the good people of Iran in the World Cup, that is taking place this summer in the United States, in Canada, and in Mexico a bit, but mostly in the United States. It's an opportunity to send a message to the people of Iran that you are on their side. Qualifying for the World Cup is an incredible accomplishment of great national pride for most countries around the world. We should allow Iranian players to stand up and represent the good people of Iran in games that are taking place this summer in the United States. Right now, the Iranian government has already put out some statements saying, hey, we're not sure whether or not we're going to be able to play. President Trump should come out and say, I will get these players from Iran, I will get them to the United States, and we will keep them safe, and we will allow them to represent the country of Iran. I think it would be a very strong statement to make. I think it would echo in a profound way, using sport as a very positive influence to connect with people around the world, and for the United States to say, we want the Iranian people to be able to have pride in Iran. This is a proud Persian culture that has been committed historically to education, that has been committed historically, particularly relative to the Middle East, to basic human rights, that has allowed itself to be bastardized and led down a totalitarian path of destruction, of decrepitude, of amoral, anti-Israel and anti-American positions that do not reflect, I sincerely do not believe this, the vast majority of the people of Iran's true opinions. So letting the football team, letting the soccer team play in the World Cup would be, I think, a profound statement of American exceptionalism, and also a profound gesture of goodwill in the direction of the people of Iran, letting them know we want you to be free. And the small gesture of allowing your team to play with American protection and allow you to represent all the good people of Iran in the United States, to me, would be a great gesture of companionship and friendship from the United States on behalf of our people to the people of Iran, to the Persian people around the world. That, to me, is a very, very positive result. That is a good example of sports uniting people across political divisions. What I would say is prayers for the troops. I believe we've lost 4 Americans so far. At least we have. The last time I was updated, when I checked my phone 20 minutes ago before I started here, and I hope that we can keep everybody safe, and that we will soon have a much better, safer Iran that lets people do something crazy. The women go out and not have to wear hijabs and be able to bring back some of the basic freedoms they had in the 1970s. Okay. Let's go. I was going to do this on Friday. Some of you may have seen we started to do this. Audio was not working. Let's see if we can get it correct now. It seems that we have basically seen a recognition that the sports media did itself no great service by trying to make the U.S. men and women into a huge major story, try to divide them. I saw at Saturday Night Live 2 American men and 2 U.S. women from the gold medal winning men and women's hockey team showed up, and there were people who were upset that the men weren't booed. I saw up in Toronto, Austin Matthews, who plays for the Maple Leafs. It seemed to me, based on the video that I saw, that the vast majority of Maple Leafs fans, to their credit, even cheered the U.S. gold medalist there who had played for their team. But I think it's important to go back in time and re-illustrate how illegitimate this story was from the get-go, okay? This all started when Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, went into the American men's locker room to celebrate. Now, a couple of things here. This is very common. Going all the way back to 1980, Walter Mondale celebrated when the U.S. men's team last won a gold medal. Jimmy Carter called. Remind me that I want to take a tee off on Megan Rapinoe a bit here as well, but let's go back in time. To me, this is a sports version of the very fine people hoax that got started and was rooted in falsehood from the beginning. And let me reiterate this for those of you who have forgotten. Go back, check the transcript, check the video if you don't believe me. Democrats for nearly a decade now have been arguing that President Trump called Nazis, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists very fine people in the Charlottesville, Virginia protest. Go back and look at what he actually said. He actually said the opposite. He directly and categorically condemned white supremacy and Nazis. He then said there were very fine people who believed that statues of Confederate soldiers shouldn't be torn down, and that there were very fine people who believed the opposite, that the statue should come down. In other words, go back and look. He categorically condemned white supremacists and neo-Nazis, and then said, hey, there are other people who are very fine people, I would like to think that I'm in that category, that don't believe it is appropriate to tear down statues of soldiers, Confederate soldiers, memorials that have been built. I would put myself in that camp. I don't believe we should be tearing down statues of a historic nature, trying to judge people based on historic standards of behavior. I think that's an awful precedent, and it's very anti-history, in my opinion. Okay? So this is, again, a sports version of the very fine people hoax. Watch what Trump said. I believe this is the joke specifically. Kash Patel holding up his phone, director of the FBI for the U.S. men's team. Watch.
Cool. And we'll do the White House the next day. We'll just have some fun. We have medals for you guys. And we have to, I must tell you, we're going to have to bring the women's team. You do know that. I do believe I probably would be impeached, okay? But anyway, if you could work that out, I would be honored to have you.
The joke is actually making fun of Democrats. I hate having to go in and analyze jokes because it defeats the entire purpose of humor. But the joke here is that if Trump doesn't invite the women, Democrats will impeach him. In other words, Democrats in Congress are looking for anything they can find to impeach the president of the United States. The joke is at the expense of left-wingers whose brains are so broken that no matter what he does, President Trump will be impeached for doing it or not doing it. He can't win. Even in that reaction, you can hear some of the guys laugh and say 2 for 2. They're actually cheering the U.S. women. The joke is at Democrat expense, at left-wing idiocy expense. The joke was not at the U.S. women's expense at all. The joke, the way they conveyed it, was a lie. Now, this is also important. The reason why I never apologize and have, to my knowledge, never apologized for any joke I've ever told or anything that's ever offended people is because the people who claim they are offended by jokes are lying. They aren't ever offended by jokes. They just don't like the politics of the person who makes the joke. And first of all, I've written about this a lot. If you're offended by jokes, you're a fucking loser. Okay? I'm sorry for cursing, but you just are. And let me illustrate what I have said for some time to personify and bring this home. What would you think if you were driving down the road and you drove by a comedy club and there were people standing with placards outside of the comedy club protesting the jokes that were going to be made inside the comedy club? You would think, I bet every single person driving by, if you saw that, today if you saw that, you would think, man, those guys or those gals, they're a bunch of losers. If you don't like a joke that's going to be told, don't go to the comedy show. Don't watch it. Be an adult. Yet, the people who would be protesting outside of the comedy show would have taken the time to get poster boards, to get dressed, to leave their house, to go stand out in the sun, the rain, the snow, the ice, whatever the weather is. And they would be standing there with their actual names, actual faces connected to their opinion. And do you know what we would say as we drove past or as we walked into the comedy club, we would think to ourselves, all these people need to get a life. But all of those people would have actually taken the time to go to protest outside of a comedy club. And yet they do all that work, and we think to ourselves, in real life, IRL as the kids say, in real life, those guys are losers. Why would we give more credit to people online who all they have to do is pick up their phone and send a tweet? Legit takes 10 seconds, may or may not be from an actual account, yet we give more legitimacy to people complaining about jokes online than we do to people who show up in real face-to-face interaction. Kind of worth thinking about, right? So the joke is a totally made-up story. It is the very fine people hoax of sports. It's a joke at the expense of the people who decided that they were offended. But there's more to it. Think about this, and I know you're going to also think about it and say, you know what, Clay, you're making a lot of sense. If President Trump had not mentioned the U.S. women's hockey team at all in that phone call, the same people would have been super offended and claimed that he disrespected women by not mentioning them at all. You know this is true. And if President Trump had delivered an absolute perfect statement of egalitarian equality, if he had said the absolute perfect thing about the U.S. men's hockey team and the U.S. women's hockey team both winning gold, if it had been Churchillian, Winston Churchill mixed with Abraham Lincoln in its unbelievable verbal dexterity, if that had occurred, do you know what they would have said? They would have been furious if the U.S. women's hockey team had accepted an invite to the White House and to the State of the Union. In other words, even if President Trump had delivered the perfect invitation, the same people who claimed they were offended by a joke would have been desperately offended if any of those U.S. women's hockey players had agreed to go to the White House and or had agreed to go to the State of the Union. In other words, the people who claimed they were offended would have been offended no matter what President Trump said, because what they really wanted was for the U.S. men and the U.S. women's hockey team to hate President Trump and insult him and insult the country and refuse to go to the White House and refuse to go to the State of the Union. Now, among those people would have been Megan Rapinoe. Some of you may have seen Megan Rapinoe saying, I would have never allowed the president to call and congratulate us. That's what she said on her podcast. But guess what? One of the members of the U.S. women's soccer team world reached out to me after this video of Megan Rapinoe went viral and said, well, actually, Joe Biden was on the field and came to celebrate with us in 2015, and President Obama called to congratulate all of the women's soccer team in 2015. That video has since been posted online. Megan Rapinoe was on that team in 2015. If many of you out there are like me, and you still sometimes look around and you think to yourself, what happened in this world that so much has changed? We went from, in 2015, the president being on the field, the vice president on the field with the team, and the president of the United States calling and it being totally normal, to people trying to claim in 2026, Kash Patel being there, holding up the phone for President Trump's call somehow was an aberration. No. That's normal. And what's happened is they've tried to convince a lot of us that what is in fact normal in sports is actually abnormal. But if you go all the way back to 1980, Mondale and Carter, you go to 2015, Obama and Biden, they're doing the exact same thing that Trump did in 2026, yet they are trying to change the culture around us, Megan Rapinoe and others. The reality is They are trying to take away sports, which unites all of us, and try to put us into divisive categories. Let me be clear on this. I have said it for a long time. It would be and is and will be long into the future appropriate for the president and the vice president, other members of their administration, to support, invite, encourage, congratulate any members of the U.S. men's or women's Olympic team when they achieve gold medals, when they win World Cups. This is the America we all want to live in. We can't allow this to be taken from us. The sports media tried to do it. Their allies on the left in this country tried to do it. To the positive, the vast majority of American sports fans didn't allow it. New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Toronto, not exactly the backbone of right-wing cities in America. All of those fans showed up, stood up, and cheered for U.S. men's Olympic gold medalist when those guys all showed up to play in their venues. And Saturday Night Live, not exactly known as a bastion of right-wing support, also cheered wildly for the men and the women who both won gold medals. When it really gets down to it, the biggest loser of this last week of coverage was the U.S. sports media, which isn't accurately reflecting what fans believe, and anyone out there on the far left wing who thought their ideals, which sometimes seem popular on social media, were reflected in the larger fan community. I've made my living off of believing in basic normalcy and common sense, and thankfully, it's a damn good living. But every time I see normal American decency triumph in the world of sports, I can't help but smile, because good American sports fans are the backbone of sanity in America. I really do believe that. The best man or the best woman should win, not the best man pretending to be a woman. And the president, whether he's a Democrat, Republican, or an independent, or some party we know not of yet, he should, or even she should, always call to congratulate when meritocratic achievement and excellence garlands the American experience and we grab gold medals or world championships. Okay, a couple of other things that are out there. Paramount. I think this is a big deal. Paramount has now won. Netflix dropped out of the race for Warner Brothers. What's the big outcome here? I believe Paramount will be able to close out the Warner Brothers purchase, and CNN, if you're a news person, will have new ownership, and Paramount Warner Brothers will now have a huge bevy, a cornucopia of sports rights. Among them, from a sports perspective, you're going to see all of the NCAA tournament back under the CBS, TBS, WTBS, True TV, TNT world, right? CBS had sold some of the rights off to Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers owns TNT, TBS, True TV. So now you will see one company owning all of the NCAA tournament. CBS, Paramount, / WBD, whatever it's going to be called, will also own all of the UFC. They'll own a lot of the NFL. They'll have Major League Baseball. They'll have some of the college football playoff. Arguably, they will be one of the trio of powers when it comes to the rights, although I guess you could also put NBC in the mix. Anyway, you could argue Paramount WBD combo is up there as having the best sports rights package in the entirety of the sports world. And again, I think from a news perspective, CNN is going to be quite a lot different going forward than it is now. So I understand a lot of you don't follow everything in the media universe, but I do think this is going to be very, very significant going forward. Texas Senate primary. Tomorrow, Texas primary overall. Encourage all of you to go vote. We had that out there. Text me if there's anything else I needed to talk about, guys, that I put in the tease. I can't remember now. I've been going for 40 some odd minutes straight. Be vigilant. Be safe. The Austin, Texas shooting appears to have been motivated by terror. That is someone who is trying to lash out on behalf of a bastardized version of his Muslim faith and also supporting Iran. I went to, if you want something positive, 2 positive things here. I don't know if I gave a review yet. The Night of the Seven Kingdoms, very good. And that might not be the official title of the show. 6-episode, relatively quick arc of a series. Encourage all of you who like Game of Thrones. I think you will really enjoy this show. I finished it recently. Also went last night, took my 11-year-old, maybe not the best dad decision, lots of violence. Took my 11-year-old to go see Scream 7. The original Scream came out with Neve Campbell all the way back in 1996. So that in and of itself was good, and all of that was fantastic. Let me close with a couple of moments here that I thought were indicative of the failure of the media to capture the life of life and death and obituaries. Look at this. I want you to look. I'm going to close with this because I do think it's impossible to justify. Look at the way the New York Times covered the Rush Limbaugh death a little bit over 5 years ago, and the way that they covered the Ayatollah Khamenei. You can pull that graphic up and put it on the screen there if you would. If you're wondering about the difference between truth and decency and honesty, that is a pretty good example of how broken all of this is. Okay, and I want to play this. I don't think we've played this cut. This goes all the way back to 2012. In 2012, Tim Thomas was a goalie for the Boston Bruins. He chose not to go visit the White House. Barack Obama was the president then. And I want to play this MSNBC clip for you. Look at how all of these people ripped Tim Thomas for not going to visit the White House in 2012 and how they said celebrating a title is not political at all. It's an honor for the team. I don't know why he had to make this political. This was just 14 years ago when Obama was in the White House, the exact opposite of what we get today. Watch.
It's time, as it always is, for What Now? Boston Bruins goalie Tim Thomas, RSVP'd thanks, but no thanks to a White House invitation. What do we make of that? Tim Thomas points out that Tim Thomas said, I exercise my right as a free citizen and did not visit the White House. This was not about politics or party, as in my opinion, both parties are responsible for the situation we are in as a country.
I think this is kind of the hyper-partisanship that just irritates everybody. It's like, just go to the White House. You don't have to run an ad or cut a commercial or anything. Just go to the White House, take part, celebrate, just like everybody else celebrates with Republicans or Democratic presidents.
Especially when you're getting honored. Obama made specific mention of him during his 6-minute address.
It's not just me. I asked Grok, which I love using. I asked Grok, hey, can you compare whether there was any criticism of anyone visiting the White House when Democrats were in office with here, the reality? Of course there wasn't, right? Only is the criticism from a left-wing perspective. They just argue the exact opposite. Let me be clear here, by the way. I will always visit the White House if I'm invited, whether it's a Democrat, Republican, or some party in the future that we don't know, because it is an honor to go to the White House. I will always talk with the President of the United States if he or she is willing to talk with me. But here is the Grok response. It's not all in your head. Everything flipped when Trump became president. Now they do the exact opposite of what they did back then. All right, I will have an FS1 show for you Wednesday. Clay and Buck will be here all this week. I hope everybody stays safe. Pray for all of our troops as they are engaging in very dangerous activities on behalf of bringing basic human rights to so many people who deserve it around the world. I am, as always, your fearless leader, DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. I'm Clay Travis, and this has been OutKick, the show.